Friends, in this video, I have taken the topic of communication. I have tried to complete the topic covering majority of the aspects of communication, and this is what they have given in the syllabus of communication, like steps in communication process, communication channels, oral versus written communication, verbal versus non-verbal communication, upward, downward, and lateral communication, barriers to communication, role of information technology. At the end of the video, I have incorporated MCQs for your assessment. I have, however, covered majority of topics, but I'll suggest you that you read the topics in detail about from the reference book suggested for the exam. You may also take the small topics and read them on internet for your better knowledge. If you want to read about the communication channel, then take the topic communication channel, put it in Google, and try to read it from the authentic sources. As the exam pattern is of multiple choice question type, so you have to be familiar with all the terms used. So if you will read from different websites, you will get better understanding of the topic. Friends, communication is one of the main principles of organization. It has been considered as an effective tool for achieving the goals of an organization. All organizations may be small or big, simple or complex, general or technical, have the necessity of communication networks. It plays a vital role as functioning of all other important principles of organization depends on its availability and effective communication. Now, we'll take the definition of communication. Communication is the act of conveying meaning from one entity or group to another through the use of mutually understood signs and defined rules. Peter F. Drucker has defined communication as the ability of the various functional groups within the enterprise to understand each other and each other's functions and concerns. Next is steps in communication, and the points are called elements of communication. So it starts with sender. Sender is the person who intends to convey the message with the intention of passing information and ideas to others, and he is also known as communicator. The second step is message. This is the subject matter of the communication. This may be an opinion, attitude, feelings, views, orders, or suggestions. Then comes encoding. Since the subject matter of communication is theoretical and intangible, its further passing requires use of certain symbols such as words, actions, or pictures. Conversion of subject matter into these symbols is the process of encoding. Then we select the media or the communication channel. The person who is interested in communication has to choose the channel for sending the required information, ideas, etc. This information is transmitted to the receiver through certain channels, which may be either formal or informal. Then the next step is receiver. A receiver is the person who receives the message or for whom the message is meant for. It is the receiver who tries to understand the message in the best possible manner in achieving the desired objective. Then comes the decoding. The message was encoded by the sender. Now it has received to the receiver who has to decode it. The person who receives the message or symbol from the communicator tries to convert the same in such a way so that he may extract its meaning to his complete understanding. After that comes the point response. The receiver may like to ignore the message or he may store the information received, or he may perform the task assigned by the sender. The communication is complete as soon as the receiver responds. And then comes the feedback. Feedback is the process of ensuring that the receiver has received the message and understood in the same sense as sender meant it. So this is the entire process of communication, and you see that there is noise in between. Noise is the that can be that message is not encoded in the way it should be encoded, or the language of the message is not proper, or the adoption of the media is not proper, or the receiver is not understanding the meaning. If you are talking to the receiver over the phone and he is working, so he may not listen certain words which you are saying, or if the telephone line is not proper, or if you have sent the message through the television and the receiver has not watched that particular program, then this may be that the message has not been received in the way it should be received. So there will be certain noise which are often called the barriers to the communication, which we will we will see next part. So the noise has to be minimized to communicate the message. Then comes the communication channels. First is face to face communication. Face to face or personal communication is one of the richest channel of communication that can be used within an organization. Physical presence, the tone of the speaker's voice, and facial expressions help recipient of a message and understand the message as it intends to be. This is the best channel for it to use for complex or emotionally charged messages because it allows for interaction between speaker and recipient to clarify ambiguity. The speaker can evaluate whether the audience have received his message as it was intended to, and he may ask the question, he may reply to the questions of the audience. So in that way, it is the best communication. Next comes broadcast media. TV, radio, etc. fall within the broadcast media communication channels. These types of media should be used when addressing a mass audience. Business seeking to notify customers of a new product may advertise or do promotions using a broadcast channel. Similarly, a CEO of a global firm may do a global company address by having a television feed broadcast across the global sites. Then comes mobile communication. A mobile communication channel should be used when a private or more complex message needs to be relayed to an individual or small group. A mobile channel allows interactive exchange and gives the receiver added benefit of interacting and interpreting the speaker's tone along with the message. He can understand whether the message communicator is happy, he is angry, or he is sad. So, in that way, it is very helpful to understand the emotions of the sender. Then comes the electronic channel. Electronic communication channels encompass email, internet, intranet, and social media platforms. This channel can be used for one-on-one, group, or mass communication. It is a less personal method of communication but more efficient. When using this channel, care must be taken to craft messages with clarity and to avoid the use of sarcasm unless it is very necessary. And the written messages or written communication, which we know very well, written communication should be used when a message that does not require interaction. It can be communicated to an employee or a group. Policies, letters, memos, manuals, notices, circulars, announcements, etc. are messages that work well for this kind of channel. Recipients may follow up through an electronic or face-to-face channel if he requires additional information or he has a certain confusion on the written messages. Then we comes to the oral versus written communication. The oral communication exchange of ideas, information, and message through spoken words. Whereas in the written communication, interchange of message, opinions, and information is in the written or printed form. The oral communication is done with the help of the words of mouth, whereas the written communication is done with the help of the text. Oral communication does not require literacy, whereas in the written communication, the sender and receiver both have to be literate. The transmission of the oral communication is fast, whereas the transmission of written communication is slow. And in the oral communication, there is no record of communication, and you don't have the proof of the communication. Whereas in the written communication, you maintain a proper record of communication. In oral communication, the feedback is received immediately, whereas in the written communication, the receipt of feedback takes time. And in oral communication, revision before delivering is not possible, it is spontaneous, whereas in the written communication, you can draft and redraft the message. And in the oral communication, you can use non-verbal cues, you can use your body language, which is not possible in the written communication. Probability of misunderstanding is very high in the oral communication because your words and your body language may not be the same, may not be delivering the same message. Whereas in the written communication, the person who receiving the communication will understand the way it was, should be understood. So misunderstanding is very less in written communication. Next is verbal versus non-verbal communication. The meaning of the verbal communication is that communication in which the sender uses words to transmit the message to the receiver, and in non-verbal, the communication that takes place between sender and receiver with the help of signs, signals. Chances of transmission of wrong message is very rarely happen in verbal communication, whereas it mostly happen in non-verbal communication. And when we go from one country to the another country, the chances of misunderstanding is very high. The signal of hand signal may be different in Japan than the UK than the US. Documentary evidence is available in case of verbal communication when it is written, whereas it is not available for the non-verbal communication. The advantage of the verbal communication is that the message can be clearly understood and immediate feedback is possible, whereas in the non-verbal communication is helpful in understanding emotions, status, lifestyle, and feelings of the sender. Presence. The message can be transmitted through letters, phone calls, etc. So the personal presence of the parties does not make any change in case of verbal communication, whereas in the case of non-verbal communication, the personal presence of both the parties to communication is must. Next is downward, upward, and lateral communication. Lateral communication is sometimes also called horizontal communication. Downward communication is that the instruction and other official messages originating with the top personnel of an organization to the lower level, generally the policies, the circulars, etc. Upward communication. In upward communication, messages are passed by the lower levels in the hierarchy up to those heading the organization, generally related to suggestions, requests, and lateral communication may take place among officials of the same level in the hierarchy or among the officials who are out of superior subordinate relationships, generally applying for the leave or such kind of communication, asking the help of the colleague. Then comes barriers of communication or barriers to the communication. First is physical conditions. Loud or distracting sounds, background noises, etc. can affect the communication. Filtering. People filter the message depending on their understanding about the importance of the message. Suppose the person who is health conscious, he will try to focus on the health, whereas the person who is not health conscious may be focusing on the other point. Selective perception. People are extra sensitive to things that are significant to them. Some people may be very particular about punctuality and they will be focusing more on the punctuality, whereas the other persons will be focusing more on the work. Information overload. Many a time the sender sends the message overloaded with information, and the receiver feels overwhelmed and fear that he will not be able to retain any information at all. Then comes denotation and connotation. Confusion can also arise from the use of language by people from different educational level, culture, and dialect. Some words have a connotation for one group of people that is not shared by another. Generalization, another factor which leads to ineffective communication is generalization. If an aged person has had a bad experience with some youth, he considers all youth as unruly. Generalization about the people from a particular locality, race, etc. And the extreme opinions, some people brand everything in this world as either good or bad. In their day to day life, they show rigidity. People with extreme opinions behave in such a way that if a person is good in one area, they consider him good in every aspect of life. This happens in other way also. Now here I'll suggest that the barriers of communication, I have taken certain barriers, but if you will go and read on internet, you will find many other barriers of communication. So please read them because it is not necessary that in examination you will be finding these barriers. There will be numerous other barriers, and the words for these barriers may be different. So please read them on internet. Now it comes to the role of IT in communication. First is due to the in advent of IT, the communication has improved in easy product launch. During the past, companies and small businesses used to face a lot of difficulty in informing their consumers about a new product. But a company had to pay for expensive door-to-door marketing, which could even take a lot of time to yield results. Nowadays, things have become simple. Through email subscription, companies will have data for most consumers. So if they introduce a new item or service, the company will draft one email with the details about a new service or product, and that message will be delivered to all consumers in a minute. Then product or service. Before the invention of the internet, it was so difficult to conduct a survey. Most companies would pay money to magazines and place survey forms and other gifts to users who filled those surveys and mailed them back to the company. Nowadays, a business can conduct a survey using social networks and provide users with incentives like gift cards. This process produces a quick response and saves the company a lot of money and time. Social interaction with the consumers. With the recent invention of social networks like Facebook and Twitter, a business can create business pages, then get followers for these pages. Video teleconferencing, high speed uh, data connection allows for the use of teleconferencing, video conferencing, and the virtual meetings held over audio and video links. Teleconferencing can save substantial amount of money otherwise spent on travel by connecting important employees in far-flung branches together to share ideas and information. The use of virtual whiteboards, communal data sharing platforms where remote users can interact as if around the same table, further increase of the possibility of the virtual workplace. Use of digital networks. Phones and printers are all digitized, not like before when communication was hindered by telephone lines during bad weathers. Most of the lines would go off. Now, with satellite and broadband transmission, you can communicate with anyone at work or off work via their mobile phones. You can also send a file to a printer while you are at home and someone in the office get the printout. Use of emails, even through social networks, are trying to replace email communications. There is certain information which users cannot exchange via social network. So email services like Yahoo Mail, Hotmail, Gmail, etc. have eased our communication. It's now very rare to find a person writing a letter because that will involve posting it to a postal office and paying delivery fees, which is not the case when you use the electronic mail, and it also reaches to the receiver immediately, whereas it used to take time for the letters. Then comes image scanning. Documents and image scanners allow workers to convert paperwork, plans, diagrams, and photos into electronic files quickly for storage and transmissions. Instead of relying on hand delivery of important documents across town or across the country, employees can scan and send these files in a matter of seconds across the internet. An architectural firm would, for instance, scan updates to a plan, transmit it to the client, receive changes, and make alteration, all before a manager would have been able to make the first run across the town. So this is all about the communication. Now we will go to the MCQs. The first MCQ is: an informal and unstructured communication channel that cuts across formal channels of communication is called the grapevine. Downward communication, upward communication, and horizontal communication. If you'll see the question clearly and you find that cuts across the formal channel. So the downward, upward, and horizontal, these are the formal communication. So only point left is the grapevine. So answer should be the grapevine. Next question. Oral communication is the interchange of between the sender and the receiver. And options are written messages, cues and clues, signs and gestures, verbal messages. And here we are talking about the oral communication. When you are using the oral, written message is not required, cues and clues are not required, signs and gestures are not required, but verbal message is absolutely required. So answer should be D, verbal message. Then comes the horizontal communication takes place between. Horizontal, the meaning itself suggests superior to subordinate, B subordinate to superior, employees with same status, and none of the above. As the name suggests, it should be employees with the same status. Next question. The effectiveness of oral communication depends on the speaker's ability to use simple language, B long sentences, C foreign words or jargons, D complex words. So the effective communication can happen when you are using the simple language. So option should be A, simple language. Next question. External communication can involve communication with suppliers, service companies, customers, or all of the above. External communication. When you are communicating with the supplier, it is external. Service companies also external. Customers also external. So all of the above should be the answer. And the internal communication happens within the organization itself. If you are communicating with your subordinates or juniors or seniors, that will be, and or within the other departments, it will be called internal communication. Next question. Which of these has maximum reach? Writing, listening, speaking, and talking. Maximum reach, because listening will happen where all to the persons who are nearby you, speaking to the person who are nearby you, and talking to the person who are nearby you. But the written message will have the maximum reach. It can be circulated among various persons in the same way it was written. Next question. Non-verbal communication does not involve words, space, gestures, or silence. And as the name suggests, it is non-verbal, so it does not require words. So answer should be A, words. Next question. Suggestions for improvements from an employee in the accounting department is an example of. And if you remember what we have discussed about the types of communication, then it is a kind of suggestion. So it is, options are upward communication, horizontal communication, downward communication, and the grapevine. So it should be the upward communication since it's a suggestion. Then it comes any communication that conveys a message consisting of words is called verbal communication, written communication, non-verbal communication, oral communication. So it involves words, so it should be verbal communication. So answer A is correct. Next question. A writer must not convey information with precision, clarity, randomness, truth. Precision should be there. Clarity should be there. Truth should be there. It should not be random. So answer should be C, randomness. Next question, which of these are to be avoided in any style of writing? Truth, clarity, compassion, and dishonesty. Dishonesty. So truth should be there, clarity, compassion should be there, dishonesty should not be there. So answer dishonesty is correct. Next question. Downward communication flows from upper to lower level, lower to upper level, horizontal, diagonal. As the name itself suggests, downward, so it should be coming from upper to the lower level. So option A should be the correct answer. Next question. Giving non-verbal messages is spontaneous, a dramatic skill, and deliberate and tutored. And non-verbal messages are spontaneous. If somebody asks you, you will shrug, you will move your hands, you will move your head, whatever. It comes spontaneously. So answer should be A, spontaneous. Spontaneous. It cannot be taught. Next question. To convert a message into groups of words, symbols, gestures, or sounds that present ideas or concepts is called encoding, feedback, noise, media richness. To convert a message into groups of words, symbols, gestures, or sounds that present ideas or concept is called. And the answer should be, because we are converting the message into words, it should be encoding. And the next question, an email message sent from the production supervisor to a consumer or customer is classified as external communication, internal communication, personal communication, or none of the above. We are sending to the outside world, so it should be external communication. Next question. In which of these problems the actual message is lost in the jungle of information? Selective perception, over communication, under communication, filtering, and the since it has lost in the jungle of information, it means you have provided the information more than the required information. Your message is overloaded with information. So answer should be B, over communication. Next question. Which of the following is are an example of non-verbal communication? Non-verbal communication. Sitting posture, facial expression, movement of hands. If you see, all the above three are the examples of non-verbal communication, so answer should be D, all of the above. Next question. Manuals and policy statements are referred to as upward communication, horizontal communication, downward communication, and all of the above. And we have discussed earlier in the when we were talking about upward downward communication, this example we had also taken. So manual and policy statements are approved by the top management and they are implemented by the lower management, so it should be downward communication. So answer should be C. Next, the principles of effective writing include brevity, clarity and accuracy, clarity, and D, accuracy. Answer is B. It should be brevity, clarity, and accuracy. Next question. Which of these must be avoided for effective communication? Sharing of activity, listening, ambiguity, and kindness. So, ambiguity should be avoided for effective communication. It is ambiguous, message is not communicated properly. So ambiguity should be avoided. Next is which of these is not a commandment of effective communication? Clarity in language is listening poorly. Next, home, communication skill, and adequate medium. So the listening poorly is not a commandment of effective communication. So answer should be listening poorly. Next question. The foremost barrier to oral communication is poor listening, humility, interestedness, and concentration. And the answer is poor listening. Next question. Which of these is the external sounds present in the channel of communication? Noise, cultural barriers, over communication, and semantic problems. And the answer is external sounds. It's noise. So answer should be A, noise. Next, the communication process completes when the sender transmits the message enters the channel, message leaves the channel, receiver understands the message. And the communication process completes because we send the message to the receiver for the understanding, so it should complete when the receiver understands the message. So answer should be D. Next, oral communication is better than written communication for conveying facts and opinions, providing opportunity to refer back, saving time, conveying feelings and emotions. And the answer is because the conveying feelings and emotion is the only thing that cannot be communicated through written communication. So for that, the oral communication is better. Therefore, the answer is D, conveying feelings and emotions. With this, we have completed our topic communication with MCQs, and I hope you have liked my video, and your likes and comments gives me motivation to make more and more videos. I hope that if you have liked this video, please you like and comment on the video in the YouTube channel. Thanks for watching and giving your time. Please read and get through the exam. Thanks and all the best.